It doesn't happen. All right? So with that in mind, as that TIF revenue continues to grow, the fire district and everybody else starts getting squeezed out of local option levies and so forth like that. So I'll go back to our specifics. We have a local option levy of 34 cents a thousand. The Oregon Constitution says that when you reach compression, which is when you hit that $10 cap, you compress up there, that as you go over that, things are backed out of your tax bill to bring it back to $10. And in the case of the fire district, that 34 cent per thousand levy that you pass goes for 4 firefighter paramedics. Well, we are in compression. We haven't seen the tax bills because these are 2011 numbers. But according to last year, we were at basically $993 a thousand within the city of Canby. Well, the voters approved the new levy for the pool, and that new levy took it from 42 to 49 cents per thousand. So you add 7, we're at $10. So we're already at the cap. So now we're looking at compression as we move forward. TIF, like I said, it's going to grow naturally. That's nobody's fault. That's the nature of the animal. That's a product of the Hem Street, Shiloh, PDC ruling. That's nobody in this room has an issue with that. But as we continue to move forward, it's going to squeeze down on things. And if you take $3 or $3,000 or $30,000 away from the fire district, it all comes away from firefighters on the street. It has nothing to do with buying fire engines or mowing the grass or any of that sort of stuff. That's actually all personnel dollars. It's dedicated to that because of the way the levy is written. So as that gets squeezed down and squeezed out, we have no room in our budget. We're like everybody else. Our current materials and services budget is about half of what it used to be. We have to borrow almost $1 million every year to operate between July 1 and the November tax check that comes in. So that's there. So I say that is a fact that it's a fact of life. It is where it is. There's nothing to cry about. It's where it is. But one of the reliefs that we can have are a couple possibilities. One is that we make sure that we manage the urban renewal district very smartly, and that when we put things in there and we gain TIF revenue as we move forward, we rapidly pay off projects, and we consider those projects very, very closely and very smartly in what we do. I by no means can tell you whether we need a library or not. Now you want to talk about firefighters, fire engines, paramedicine, and all that sort of stuff. I'm an expert in that. Penny's the expert when it comes to libraries, and I by no means can go against what she says. So that's the first part. The next part is the issue in regards to real market value and assessed value. Now we agree on just about everything that Mark said, that Greg said, and I have to tell you, Greg and I are good friends. We kind of differ on urban renewal, but we're good friends, and it's a very respectable relationship. So you're not going to hear me say anything negative about him. I too have spoken to Mr. Roman and so forth like that. And one of the things I provided to the members of the commission is a thing up here. It says 12 Valley Fire and Rescue, or TVF&R, assess value analysis of Canby. Now this is a project that 12 Valley was doing anyway. 12 Valley is a large fire district, the largest fire district in the state. They have area, territory, and they cover all the way from West Lynn to Aloha, all the way up to the northwest Portland. They cover a lot of area in 3 different counties. And they were looking to see what the effects are of the real market value, the drop in the real market value, and the assessed value, and where that all lands. And so they did an analysis. And since they did Clackamas County, I asked their chief, I said, since you got the data, can you do that for the city of Canby? And he called up his GIS people, and they did that. So understand that while Greg was talking about the futures, and I agree with him, that we could see 1.5% growth in our assessed values. That's true. I'm going to show you where we've moved as far as real market values versus assessed values. And the thing that I want to point out, and I'll share this with the commissioners as we're talking, in 2011, we had about 14% of the properties within the city of Canby in which their assessed value was 90% or more of the market value. So if you're familiar with property taxes, you have your assessed value here. It can't grow by any more than 3% per year per measure 50, right? And then you have your real market values, and if we've looked at our property tax statement, my real market value has dropped from being over $100,000 different than my assessed value to now it's down to about $13,000. There's that squeeze that's coming into place. In 1 year, in 2011, 14% of the properties were in that 90% mark. In 2012, January 1, 2012, the numbers from the assessor's office says that that's now up to 44%. So what I'm throwing out here is 2 things. Number one, we're concerned about compression and stuff that's generated because of the TIF, something that exists. Way to resolve that is let's pay off the projects, let's pay off the debts, do whatever we can to speed up the end of the urban renewal district. It's all going to bother us all, whether it be the fire district or it be another special service district or it be the city. We're all going to be faced by it in the future. So we have to be smart in what we do, and we have to consider our projects very smartly. My thing just went blank. Dang it. I knew there was a flaw in this process. So, for anybody on my staff, and Troy's the fire marshal sitting back there, he's probably laughing because he knows how inept I am electronically. So anyway, we want to make sure that all the issues in regards to the tax income refinancing, the impact it has on the $10 for the government part is minimized as we go forward. And there's lots of strategies. Some of that is if we get a good property that's in place, we feel real good about the economic engine that's moving forward, maybe we start freeing up some properties and bring them out of the urban renewal district to start boistering up and building up the assessed values of those taxing districts so we can all start reaping benefit a little bit early. We just don't wait to the end to make that happen. Next, for me, like I said, right now, when a lot of urban renewal districts started, there was really a different set of rules. Canby Urban Renewal District was established before that Hem Street Portland Development Commission ruling. All right? And so the reality is we were playing baseball before, now we're playing football. We have to adapt the way that we think to make things move forward. We can't continue to have the same thoughts because now we have the TIF money that's in there is taking up part of that general government, and it is going to take away firefighters. It is going to take away police officers. It is going to take things, not tomorrow, not next year, not in 2 years, but 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. It is going to affect us. So we have to be smart in what we do, and we have a chance for some opportunities to move forward with that. And I told you earlier I wouldn't talk about the library anymore, but I'm going to say this one last time. The fire district is not opposed to the library project. All right? I am not an expert in that field. I don't have the credentials to tell you that. And my board of directors by no means has authorized me to stand here and tell you that. And I'm looking over at my board president, vice president who are sitting here. But where we're at is we'd like for you to make sure you're really smart and talk about how you do it. And lastly, when I talked about earlier and I talked about not knowing about things, and I'll get on my soapbox for 1 minute and then I'll step away. When the urban renewal plan was put into place, Commissioner Carson and I were on the group that wrote the urban renewal plan. Commissioner Daniels was a city councilor at the time. He was around. And we talked about several things. And one of the things we talked about was a deep concern from the fire district that we have representation in the process. So at that time, it was decided not to give us a representation on the agency board. Yet we'd have representation on the steering committee. Well, that started off, moved along just fine, and after a period of time, it was decided that the steering committee wasn't important anymore. And the fire district, the school district, the neighborhood associations, all that, lost our direct voice to the system. My proposal, or I guess my request of this group would be, please look into a method to bring those people back to the table, and we can stop having the communication problems that we're having. I appreciate the fact that I get the agendas, Mr. Chair, but when they just say urban renewal, discussion of urban renewal projects, it really doesn't tell me a whole lot, and I work about 60 hours a week as it is. I have no problem being here if I need to be, but if it's not specific or I don't get a heads up, I don't know what's going on, and I can't tell my board. So, so that's where we sit, and I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions.
Thanks, Chief. Any questions or comments from the Commission?
No, I already asked and answered.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, we're going to go into the general comments now from everyone. I've got like 18 cards here so far. If we can limit our testimony to 3 minutes, we would appreciate it. Next speaker will be Mary Walsh. After Mary, Kathy Shin. Following Kathy will be Craig Shin.
I moved here 15 years ago from West Lynn, and I love the city more than I can say. I can think of nothing more exciting, a more exciting project to revitalize our citizens, our city, and our youth. 61% of the Canby area residents voted for us to have a new library. 68% of the municipal residents voted to build a new library. You made a commitment last March to build a new library. People come up and say, what's happening? How can they change their mind? And I don't really have a very good answer for that. I really don't understand. We desperately need an anchor downtown. We need a city center. We need meeting rooms. We need an anchor, as Penny and Greg and Troy, what their names said. We need an anchor to bring people together. That's part of the joy of this community. Part of your legacy can be that you voted to support a new library. We'll remember your names and that you supported a new library. You are forward-thinking, and we're counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
As the speakers come up for the commission, I'm not going to ask if you have comments, but if you have one or ask for a follow-up, just say something, okay? All right, Kathy Shen, followed by Craig Shen, followed by Bob Backstrom.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I wanted to mention there's been a number of very good points brought up about good reasons for the library, and the fact that it really, in a broader sense, is a community place to meet, to have meetings, and with this whole complex you're talking about. I want to say too that I really think this reflects what our values are, whether we value lifelong learning from toddlers up through senior citizens, of which I am now.
A lot of us are.
And I also wanted to say that I visited some of the libraries in nearby communities, Wilsonville and West Lynn, and they've invested in new library facilities that have brought their libraries into the 21st century, which is so important that we do that. And I want to say that it also sends a message. Somebody mentioned about what do we invest in, and that businesses look at what we invest in. And I also want to include residents look at what you invest in. And to have a community center with a library focus there, it tells people what we value, and it's a place, these other two cities that I've visited, they're very attractive, welcoming, and functional places. And I think it really says a lot about those communities, and I know people I've talked to are very proud of those facilities. And that's what I'd really like us to have here in Canby. And I do agree that it's going to bring more people downtown. I think you are going to get an increase in use, and it's a place that we really need for our youth in particular. And I know there's discussion about some homework places and some things like that, where there are a lot of people who don't have the ability to, as Penny mentioned, access the internet for a variety of reasons. And there was one letter to the editor in the paper where someone talked about how, as a youth, libraries, libraries were so important to him. And I know that that was the same for me. When I was growing up, I want my grandkids now to be able to enjoy the services that this new facility could do. And I want to commend the city staff. I think they've done a great job. The costs have been reduced. It seems to me like this revised plan, it's like a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense. So I hope you will vote for that.
Thank you. Craig Shen, followed by Bob Backstrom, followed by Roger Reif.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. As Kathy said, we're Cambyites. We've been here since Bob Rapp was mayor, and we've watched. I've sat on the planning commission here and been here at many different kinds of times for many different issues, and we've watched. We love libraries, and Canby's library in particular, and. You know, the decision before you tonight, as I understand it, is to whether or not to expand the scope of the funding that you've approved a year ago. And what a deal. What a deal. You get essentially 3 for 1. We've watched the library grow and change in terms of its use, expand, and as Kathy said, we've used it, our kids have used it, now our grandkids are using it. It's a great kind of facility. I was really struck with the presentation tonight. I've been wondering, as the police have moved out, and I've been listening to the discussion about what's going to happen with this public square, what it's actually going to look like. And tonight, I had a sense of a vital, revitalized downtown. Thrilled with the kind of space that's projected for the library, but even more so for the opportunity to restore, revitalize, and repurpose this City Hall, which is a building that I just love. And the notion that in addition to that, we could actually gain efficiencies in the way we actually administer government by consolidating the administrative services seems to me like an easy yes, if the question before you is whether you should expand the scope of the commitment that you've made to expend $8.5 million. So in my mind, I was struck by the fact that the presentation made a strong argument for, staff presentation made a strong argument for the economic development contributions, and certainly, and I can attest to this independently on my professional life and my own research, that libraries are a major contributor to civic life as well as economic life. So there's no doubt about what my position is, and that's for you to vote in favor of the staff recommendation to expand the scope. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Greg.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Shin works with a very good friend of mine, Jennifer Allen, Portland State, and we're going to try and get him to work on the visioning program, because I think
Great.
that's one of the things he does at Portland State is urban planning, et cetera.
Good.
So,
Thank
he and
you.
his wife
Thank you.
also.
Okay, Bob Backstrom, followed by Roger Reif, followed by Winnie Savory? Safety? Savory, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do these work?
That's from
For
TV.
TV land, here's you.
I'm on TV?
You're on
You are
TV.
TV.
Live,
Wore the right shirt.
Go Ducks!
live on TV.
Oh,
Because it wasn't controversial.
beavers, yeah, right, yeah.
Of course I'm for the library. Who isn't? My concern is the funding. I was looking for an impact statement here tonight that would tell us what impact this would have on the future of the taxing jurisdictions with which we are all familiar. What is it going to do 15 years from now to the schools? Will they be compressed, as the chief has mentioned, because they can only go so high with their funding, and will they then need to come to us for a special levy? Will the police need the same thing, the city's budget? Will they need a special levy because they too have reached their maximum taxing potential? Will the schools need to come for that? I'm really concerned about that part of it. I've heard nothing about it except the county's going crazy about URDs because they're finding out that there's no such thing as free money. And everyone says this is all free, it won't cost a dime. We're foolish to pass it up. I say we're not going to be so foolish, or we will be foolish if 10 or 15 years from now, all of a sudden the schools can't operate and they're begging for money again, which they always have to do. They have to beg for money, not even when they're compressed, because with the 3% and the measure 50, I mean, we can't keep up anyway. So you and I and the rest of the taxpayers are going to be asked over and over again because of this compression, and this relates to the URD. So I say there's no free money. I was looking for the impact statements. I haven't really heard any. I'm looking at your own website, and it talks about foregone funds. What are foregone funds? It talks about funds that are foregone from the school district, from the city, from the fire, but I've heard no one talk about foregone funds. What if the $1 million isn't raised by the generosity of people as part of this? What happens? Who makes up that $1 million? There's no guarantee to that. But the question I have for you folks here tonight, is there anyone among you who can stand up right now and guarantee that the passage of this measure will have no negative financial impact on the fire department, the schools, the city services for the next 10, 15, or 20 years? I'd love to hear one of you stand up and say yes, no impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Reif, followed by Winnie
Savory.
Savory, okay. And follow, I'm sorry. I can see it on this one. John Savory will follow Winnie. Roger?
Roger Rife, 273 North Grant Street. I've been on a member of the library board for about 6 weeks now. But actually what I'm here to talk about is something that I hadn't heard tonight, and I want to add something. For 12 years I was a member of the Canby School Board. I think I'm pretty familiar with that, chair for a few years. And we passed a bond to put in the Fine Arts Stadium, which we now know is the Dick Brown thing. And I walked Main Street to pass that. And I just wanted to say that, you know, at the time, when you look into things, I went into Superintendent Brown, who I think many of you knew or had some recollection of. He really had to sell me on it because it's what the community wanted, and we went to different meetings. I went to him and we talked about it. I said, I can't walk the streets because I'm chairman of the bond thing when there's things like an orchestra pit in there. There's things like comfortable chairs to sit in. I said, this is what, you know, this is not it. We got to watch the taxpayer dollar. And he said, you know, we looked at that, and then we came back, and after the bond passed, we said we got to look at things. And you know, we said, you know, this looks right, it feels right, and the community wants it. And so we stepped out on that limb, and you know, I will tell you that over the years that I have people from out of town come, we go to plays, we go to things, and they're so impressed with the acoustics, the lighting, the seating, and things like that. People like nice things, and these aren't teacher lounges, it's places for people to be. And I think we support things and we like things when it's for the public and we can use it. So I like the concept. I totally agree. If anybody really knows me personally, they would say I'm about the most conservative man they ever knew. I mean, if you really knew me, you'd say that. And I don't like debt. I don't like debt. But I think we have to look at the times. We have to look at the opportunity. We have to seize the opportunities. And I really think that this feels right. And I look for your support.
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
Winnie Savory, followed by John Savory, followed by John Drott.
My name is Winnie Savory, and I live in Canby. I think the new library sounds wonderful, but there's only one problem. We're broke. America is broke. We have to borrow money to pay our bills from China. Our country's financial situation is dire. Our children and grandchildren are stuck with paying a $16 trillion debt that we created for them. Oregon has an 8.7% unemployment rate, and the underemployment rate is even higher. Cities are beginning to declare bankruptcy, and urban renewal districts take money away from police, fire, and schools. We don't need to spend $8 million on a new library at this time. We have a perfectly functioning library. It's not fancy, it's not pretty, but it is functional. If we don't stop the spending now, when will we? I urge you to vote no on the new library and begin the steps to save our children's future and stop burdening them with more debt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Winnie.
John Savory, John Drott after him, and then Debbie Barber.
My name is John Savory. I live at 980 Northwest 22nd in Canby. I don't think there's a person in this room that doesn't like libraries. I use the library on a regular basis. But libraries are a lot like puppies in the respect that everybody loves puppies and everybody loves libraries. But the fact of the matter is that, that these are very difficult economic times. Our country, our state, our county, and our city are living on borrowed money. And as Mr. Ellis said, we are going to be accumulating many millions of dollars in debt for this project, well over $5 million in interest alone for that. And it's money that we don't have. It's the equivalent of families living paycheck to paycheck. They run out of money at the end of the month, and they pay their utility bills by putting it on their Visa. And then they feel, well, we'll go out and buy a big screen TV on our Visa. That doesn't make much sense. So I favor, before building a new library or a civic center, I favor reducing the public debt, putting Canby back on a sound financial footing, and giving the taxpayers some breathing room. And I would have to say that previous people said that this is a no-brainer. I'd say that $5.6 million in interest payments alone is something serious to think about. It is something that is going to tax your brain. It's not easy to make that decision. The easy thing to do is always to spend other people's money. And so that is the no-brainer part if it isn't your money. But it is our money. So I would urge you to maybe table this whole proposal until such time as we pay down our debt and we get back on a more sound financial footing. Like I say, everybody loves libraries, everybody loves puppies. It's a great project if you have the money. We don't have the money.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
John Drott, followed by Debbie Barber, followed by Linda Warwick.
I'm John Drott, 23951 South Blount Road, Canby, Chair of the Library Board. I've attended URA meetings this year, even ones that have nothing to do with the library, so I could get the big picture. I don't like being here, I don't like having to do this. I do this because it's my responsibility as Chair of the Library Board, and because I believe in the old axiom, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good people do nothing. How many of you have credit cards? Credit cards have ruined a lot of people. It's easy money, the high interest rates, the length of time it takes to pay off if you can only cover the minimum. But I have a credit card that has no annual fees. I pay it off every month, so I never make interest payments. It even pays me to use it. It's just a financial tool. How many of you have had or have mortgages? The underwater mortgages, the mortgage industry itself has devastated this country's economy. But in 1990, my wife and I took out a mortgage we could barely afford. It was a risk, but all progress requires risk. If we had waited just 24 months at that time because of what the market was doing, we would still owe hundreds and thousands of dollars on a mortgage that we've now paid off. Mortgages are just a tool. But in my case, my family is more prosperous because we took out that mortgage at that time. The URD is just a financial tool, like a mortgage or a credit card. It can be used poorly and can cause harm. It can be used correctly and create prosperity. 2 weeks ago I was here, as were you, to hear Greg Ellis give a URD update. Many here tonight were not here to hear those details. There were no surprises. It's working according to plan. You've done a very good job. Greg covered those details, so I won't, but the bottom line is there has been risk, but that risk has been rewarded. And this URD has been great for Canby. To be against URDs in general is the same as being against credit cards and mortgages in general. To be against this URD and the way it's performed is to be against a better Canby. Some people aren't just against URDs in general, they're against government doing anything in general. It's a dark and cynical philosophy that's based on the belief that the best thing people in your position can do is nothing. And in doing nothing, we'll all be magically in a better position. We in Canby may lean to the right, but we don't lean so far that we'll fall for that. We may disagree at times, but I know you're all good people. And we know all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. What about this project? Well, we've heard all the benefits it's going to bring to Canby. I don't have to cover that. With this project, we can keep the small town sense that we all value, and by dramatically improving Canby's civic core, its hub, its heart, and draw prosperity to downtown. We can avoid the sprawling growth, avoid the soullessness of cities that are lacking a core, like Wilsonville or Tualatin or Tigard, And yet, those communities do have something Canby needs. They've got highly educated young people. Recently, there was a report at Slate.com titled How Portland Got Its Groove Back. And it was on how some cities around the country have managed to do well in these hard economic times. The reason wasn't because they were cool or hip or green, or because they have unfettered regulations, or are bastions of conservatism or liberalism. The common denominator was that they have a higher density of highly educated young people. To quote the article, that the slow, boring work of improving a local area's educational attainment is the best path to prosperity is rarely what people want to hear, but it's what the data show. The library is the only vehicle for the entity known as the City of Canby to improve our educational attainment. The perfect model for sustaining a vital Canby is for us to have our children go off and get their higher education and then come back and raise their families. But we risk losing those highly educated young people when we demonstrate a lack of support for those services they value for themselves and for their children. Just picture the communities that embrace their library, Wilsonville, Westland, Lake Oswego. I don't know if it's a cause and effect relationship, but it's no surprise that they are cities with an abundance of highly educated young people, and they're doing better than Canby economically. Now consider the communities along 99E like Gladstone, the ones that are not supporting their library. Which communities do you want Canby to be like economically? As leaders, what is your vision for Canby? Now, I've heard some say that this isn't the best time for this project. And they're right. This isn't the best time. The best time was 6 to 12 months ago. And each month that goes by is 1 month we're further away from the best time to do this. You made a promise to this community 15 months ago to do this. I've watched dawdling and delaying and even willful obstruction of this project for far too long. Anybody wanting to further delay this project for whatever new reason that comes up, I have to ask, where have you been for the last 15 months? There's no surprise here. 15 months makes a huge difference in the life of the children. We've had some children here tonight. 2 hours is too long.
Summarize, please.
Yep. 15 months makes a huge difference in the life of a child, and it's shameful that we've wasted that time. It would be even more shameful to see you to decide to waste even more of it. This is what this vote means. A yes vote says we can be a community that does the slow, boring work of improving our educational attainment. A no vote says that we can't be that community. A yes vote says we can be a community that can dramatically improve its civic core, its hub, its heart. A no vote says we can't be that community. A yes vote says we can be a community that does not allow triumph of evil because we have good people unafraid to do something. A no vote says we can't be a community that prevents the triumph of evil because we have good people who do nothing. This may sound corny, but are you leaders of can be or can't be? We want to live in can be. Don't vote no and be leaders of can't be. Make us proud, vote yes, and be leaders of can be. Community awaits your vote.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Debbie Barber, followed by Linda Warwick, followed by Tracy Height.
Hi, I'm Debbie Barber, and I've lived in Canby for 34 years. I retired from the Canby school system 2 years ago, and I've used our public library since it was in the basement of the Graham building. For several years at school, we used to bring our kids to the library as a field trip. They did a bunch of research, and it was wonderful, and I still see those kids coming back to the library all the time. It's getting really crowded in there, though. Currently, I'm in the library every week to tutor a Canby middle schooler. We've been meeting at the public library for 2 years, and I can tell you that it's becoming increasingly crowded, even just in the stacks between the rows. They've gotten closer together because they're running out of room. This summer, we meet on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, which is the time that the library opens, and usually there's at least a dozen people waiting out there for the doors to be unlocked. Even in the rain, people are standing out there waiting for the doors. My student and I hope to get in there quick so we can get one of the 2 tables that have a smooth surface that you can ride on. A couple of times we've had to sit on the floor. It's just well used. She prefers to be in the back corner where she's not going to be bothering people, where it's a little bit more private, but there's people in there, you know, using their laptops or they're reading or they're doing other library things, and so we really worry about interrupting them. So a library that has study rooms or places where we can do tutoring would be awesome. I've talked to several other tutors, and we're trying to like schedule so we're not all there at the same time, so we can all have the same tables. And during the school year, it's particularly crowded because kids are in there working on their projects. With the economy the way it is, I've noticed an increase in families while I'm in the library. Preschoolers are choosing books and picking out videos. Entire families are there, particularly a lot of Hispanic families are in there, which I'm very, very thrilled that they're using our public services. But as I see more and more people coming in there, again, it's getting more and more crowded, and we're going to need more stuff for them, and we just don't have any place to put it. Canby is well known as a good place to raise kids. It disturbs me that our census is going down, that we're having fewer people are living here and people are leaving. We've always been known as a great place to raise kids. I think that there is a correlation between our large class sizes and the library being overcrowded and all these other things. Why would people choose to live in Canby when they can go to Lake Oswego or Westland or some other place that has more services available to them? My understanding is that urban renewal district, please, somebody, if I'm wrong, please tell me. An urban renewal district takes the money from, like you froze the tax base, and it's the money from there on up, and it's businesses paying their fees to come move to town or to use services. I'm not quite sure where that money is.
That in a
but it's
ballpark,
not
that's-
taxpayer dollars. It's not like our property taxes.
In a ballpark, that's pretty close.
Okay, thank you. I know it's a little bit more complicated than I understand. So really, as we're talking about what we as citizens would have to pay for, we're just really going to be talking about operating money, right, for the library? Is that correct?
Operating money comes from the library district.
Okay,
Right.
but that is tax dollars,
Yes.
our property tax
It's in your property taxes.
Okay,
It's permanent.
but as far as all this construction stuff you're talking about, that money comes from the business growth,
That's right.
correct?
That's right.
Okay, now the interest that people have talked about, is that also paid for from the business growth?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so so when people say that it's really, it's to the citizens, it's a real blessing for us because we won't have to pay so much for having this there, you're correct.
It won't increase your property tax bill.
It won't increase, okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding how the system works. Because I also know that when people leave town, that's more taxes for the rest of us. If we get more people to come to town, then we pay less taxes because more people have to share the load. Understand, am I?
Close.
I'm trying to be really simple. I'm just trying to be really simple.
Come
so
on.
that